hard to lose weight. It's not hard to eat great tasting foods moderately and in a controlled way with some restraint and watch the weight drop. In fact, to those that say that losing weight is hard, I often say, okay, if you want to believe that losing weight is hard, then I'll acquiesce. Okay, losing weight is hard. Gotcha. But when I was 300 pounds, that was hard too. I will submit to you that it was a lot harder for me to live at 300 pounds than it was to show some restraint and get down to 200 pounds. So we're here to help every willing and wanting heart that wants to lose weight, easily lose weight. So we're glad that we've got you tonight. This is our fast track where all of the beginners start. You just go to the website, myshibboleth.com, start with our fast track system, click the dashboard, click fast track, and then there's a lap system that's well laid out. I'll show it to you before we leave tonight. But I want to ask our experienced members, since most everybody here has already been through fast track, do you have any questions? Michelle says, the mindset is the hardest. Why do you think that is? And so that we don't have lengthy delays, I'll throw my 2 cents in that arena. The mindset is hard because we adopt the mindset of our environment. That's why the mindset is hard. Just as when we come into this world, we adopted the mindset of our parents. As we become adults, we adopt the mindset of our environment unless we have a specific plan and specific goals. You know that old saying, if you don't run your own life, somebody else will run it for you. And that's why all my brothers and sisters have wound up overweight. We're letting other people dictate our life and run our life for us. It's not what we intended to become overweight and deal with the unintended consequences of being overweight. It has been the mindset of those around us, and we have adopted that mindset. So I will submit, being a Christ-centered program, that until we let this mind be in us that was also in Christ Jesus, we will not be very successful for very long. We have to adopt the environment, the spiritual environment that Christ set forth of love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, meekness, faith, and self-control. Until we're willing to do that, there's very little hope that you can overcome obesity. A diet won't help you, because if you don't use what you know, you're not going to get anywhere with it. You've got to adopt that mindset, whatever you want to call it. I call it the mind of Christ. And if you don't live and walk therein, then you're going to really struggle, and your weight loss and wellness journey will often end in frustration. So we get to choose each day. Choose this day who you will serve, right? We get to choose each day. If God gives us Wednesday, we will get to choose who we serve with our actions tomorrow. We can choose to serve the world and seek pleasure all day, which ends up yielding long-term pain and sacrifice of abundant life and joy. Or we can choose to serve the Lord. And one of the ways I do that is I eat breakfast for the Father, lunch for the Son, and dinner for the Holy Spirit. I earn the right over a series of perfect Shibboleth, perfect days, to have that holiday occasionally for celebratory reasons. And that's awesome. That's an awesome way to live. I highly recommend it. I've tried it both ways, and pursuing my lust ended up with a deprived and depraved Travis. Choosing the Lord has given me more freedoms. I've been able to enjoy more freedoms because I'm living with some restraint. Any questions or comments tonight? And I did say comments too. Anything you'd like to unpack question-wise, or some comment? We've got the faithful few here tonight. It's so good to have our faithful few. It's like a Wednesday night church service, isn't it? On a Tuesday night. The faithful come out. Questions or comments, anyone? We're glad you're here, Miss Jennifer. You've done so well with the program. I know our Father in heaven is extremely happy with you taking care of that beautiful and sacred temple. I'm here for you guys if you have anything. I probably will go over this in our next session, the accountability meeting, a new life accountability meeting. So if you're planning on coming to that, you may hear this twice. But if there were no questions or comments, I was going to approach the group with some things that have come up in emails lately. And that is folks indicating that they lack motivation. Now, I would say they want to be motivated or they wouldn't be emailing, right? So there is hope when people say, I'm not motivated, but I desire to be motivated. I've been dealing with emails where people are dealing with depression, where there's seemingly no way to overcome being overweight or get off medications. Because they won't do the program, not just this program, but other programs too. People struggling with stick-to-itiveness, if you will, and they don't know why. Well, I'm going to tell you, instead of a mental reason why, I'm going to tell you about a physiological reason why. And I'm going to read Jennifer's post shortly. Her comment, great one. That's good stuff. Can't wait to read all that. So, has anyone ever dealt with a lack of energy and a lack of motivation? And maybe you are right now. Maybe your success has come from you willing it, but it's been hard. You feel like you're white knuckling it. Or you're trying to lose weight, but you're dealing with depressed episodes, a lack of hopefulness, etc. So I want to talk to you about physiological reasons why that's happening. It's not just mental. We talk a lot in class about behavior modification and the mental aspects, and it can come across at times like, as a coach, we're just saying, get over it. You're an adult. You need to take responsibility for where you're at. You're not a child anymore. You can't eat yourself into oblivion. These are all true statements. They're harsh, but they're true. And I think they have a lot of empathy. They're packaged with a lot of empathy. Sympathy is not what we need. Empathy is what we need. Empathy says to someone struggling, I know I've been there too, but there's a better way. Get up off your tail and let's get going. That's empathy. So when we say you're an adult, you have to make good decisions, you have to take care of your temple, that is empathetic. To let someone grovel and sit where they're at and tell them it's okay and they're okay when they're 30 plus pounds overweight is not love. In my estimation, that's a special type of hate, to tell someone who's very sick and undone that, hey, it's all right. You need to just stay where you're at. I've had that battle with someone today where they said that I've heard this term twice today, once on the news and once in a message, that I'm creating fat phobias. I hope so. It's the leading cause of all premature death in our country. But I digress. A lot of what we say is mental. It's mental. But there are physiological reasons why you lack energy and you're demotivated. Does anybody want to unpack that? And do you know why you may be lacking motivation and energy? Again, this one may lose me some members, but so be it. I have to tell the truth. Physiological reasons why you're not motivated. When someone asks me how to get motivated, I often point them to their why. I often point them to the videos that I did, the 6 steps to building a powerful why. But I rarely address the physiological reasons why one is demotivated to lose weight when they know it's killing them. And it's much easier to talk to in a different circle than it is this circle. You'll understand why in a moment. Anybody know why? Physiological reasons for a lack of energy and motivation towards improving one's own physical health. Now, we get that obesity is a self-inflicted wound, correct? Y'all get that? Engage with me here. Don't leave me out here by myself. So take a look at this, okay? I'm going to read you a verse, and then I'm going to make some equivalents with another matter. Bear with me here. Let me get to it. Okay. I want to read this to you. This is Proverbs 23, and I'm going to start with verse 21. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness, now what I say, a lack of energy, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she's old. I'm going to go down a little bit. Bear with me. Now verse 29. Who hath woe? Woe is a lack of motivation. Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Key phrase there. Who has wounds without cause? Your wounds when you're overweight, the unintended consequences of obesity, the leading cause of all premature death in this country, these are wounds without cause. These are undeserved wounds that you place upon yourself. Okay. Then it goes on to say, who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine. Now remember that it was also talking about not just alcohol, but gluttony. They that tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth its color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent and stingeth like an adder. So where am I going with that? When we talk about alcoholism and we talk about drug addiction, it's easy for people to buy in to that they're demotivated and they lack energy because they've got stung by alcoholism and the effects of strong drink. The context of that was also talking about gluttony. We can include gluttonous behavior in that same within that same subject matter. And here's why. Physiologically, overeating causes such huge problems with one's motivation. When we have drugs, when we consume drugs, when we consume alcohol, we get a huge release. We get a huge release of a chemical called dopamine in our brain. Dopamine is a pleasure chemical. Now, example, making love to one's husband or wife, for some, can call, we're adults here, allows for pleasure, allows for a chemical release of pleasure in the brain that is a moderate dose of pleasure. And then the body works hard to reach back and get to a level of homeostasis again. And we crave that. We crave that connection with our loving partners so that we can have some reasonable amounts of pleasure. Then our body corrects itself and gets back to a level of homeostasis whereby you operate normally, where you're motivated. In fact, a connection with another human being causes motivation, more energy, okay? So other things that cause a dopamine release in the brain, a massage. Anyone ever had a massage? A massage, a good, moderate, intense massage causes a dopamine release in the brain, feel good chemicals that allow us to feel good. And anytime we experience pleasure, chemically, we seek that pleasure out again. These are pleasures that I've mentioned that are moderate, well-balanced pleasures and allow for a moderate release of dopamine so that we can have pleasure in this life. It's a chemical thing. It's the way God made your body. When we drink alcohol, when we're consuming alcohol or consuming drugs, we don't get a moderate release of dopamine. We get a huge release of dopamine, that pleasure chemical. And then the body has to work really hard to get back into homeostasis. And eventually, when we return to drugs and alcohol, and our body's given these huge doses of dopamine, and then they subside, nothing else comes close to giving that huge release of dopamine. So when we don't have that huge release of dopamine, we are lethargic. We don't have motivation. We're often depressed. The same thing with drugs and alcohol. So now, does anybody here know what we ingest that studies suggest has even a worse impact on homeostasis and dopamine levels than even drugs or alcohol? Does anyone know? Not food. Food is very pleasurable. The kind of foods that we approve are very pleasurable, but they don't cause too much of a release of dopamine. There you go, Michelle. Sugar and starch. Sugar and starch are as addictive as crack cocaine. So when we consume sugar and starch, now again, sugar tastes sweet. What does starch taste like? It doesn't taste sweet, but the impact's the same, if not worse than sugar. Starch is what holds processed foods together. That's all it is. And it doesn't, you'll find it in a lot of salty treats and a lot of processed foods like cereal. There's just tons of starch. When we consume sugar and starch, we get an otherworldly release of dopamine from the brain. Now, the problem is the next time we get that same release, it's never enough. It's like a drug. You have to have more and more and more of it to reach the same high. So, for example, if I have a slice of 3-layer chocolate cake, if I haven't had it in a while, like having a glass of wine after a long cessation from it, if I have a huge slice of 3-layer cake, I get a huge release of dopamine, a feel-good chemical. I feel good. It's very pleasurable. Okay. Now, if I do that again the next day, it will take twice that much cake to get that same level of dopamine release. So chemically and physiologically, you can't help yourself but to crave these drugs. They ought to be illicit drugs, sugar and starch. So when you lack motivation, and the only way, now think about it, you can self-examine. Think about your day. And sometimes you white knuckle it and get through it without sugar and starch. But unless you come off of it for a long period of time and then you only yield to it during celebratory times, your neurotransmitters are all messed up. You don't know if you're happy or not because you're searching out that next dopamine ride. Okay, and that dopamine ride, you become conditioned that dopamine ride is the only way to be happy. So you seek it out. And when people start a diet and they're trying to abstain from sugar and starch and things that make one overweight, FAT, you don't ever even stop to think that, hey, it's going to be a tough road for 3, 4, 5 weeks because I've got to come off of sugar and starch, just like one would come off alcohol, to get a reset in my brain so that normal, everyday type of pleasurable activities cause me pleasure again. Example, you take that 3-layer cake versus exercise. Exercise causes and allows for a dopamine release. You get feel-good chemicals, a moderate amount of feel-good chemicals. But what happens when your psyche is comparing that to the dopamine, the huge dopamine release from 3-layer cake? Are y'all following me? It can't compete. Exercise can't compete. The same thing with what we started with, an example of connection and lovemaking with one's spouse or partner. It can't even, I'm not trying to do a funny, but it's true. It can't even compete with 3-layer cake. Yeah, you'd love to have both, but if you had to pick one, most people that's been in a relationship for a long time would pick the 3-layer cake over the lovemaking with their partner, because they're chemically, their body is searching for that high pleasure that you get from sugar and starch. But it's like the devil, right? It's like the devil. It's like the devil is tricking you, is kind of waving a carrot in front of you. Carrots won't do you any harm. Carrot cake will. He's waving carrot cake in front of you, and you're chasing it for that dopamine release. So you'll have to do the hard physiological work to rid yourself of that sugar and starch addiction if you want to be successful long term. The human, you reap what you sow. So if you've spent years chasing that dopamine high, even though you weren't calling it that, if you spent years chasing that, you're going to have to spend a month or two trying to get free from that and letting your body chemically do a reset and get you back to a level of homeostasis. And then all of a sudden you'll enjoy the simple pleasures in life as though they were great pleasures. So if you're finding that life is a little mundane, unless you're eating in that moment that you're eating, if you find that life is mundane and you're losing your excitement and your zeal, it's no different than if you were dealing with someone who is addicted to alcohol or drugs. And that is the reminder and the warning that I wanted to stress tonight. At some point, you've got to realize the physiological addiction that you're experiencing to sugar and starch. And you're going to have to be an adult, a strong one of character, to rid yourself of that addiction if you want to chemically get right again. We have, we're not, it's not like we can live years chasing that chemical high and then all of a sudden, boom, be right back. There's reaping and sowing. If we've lived with gluttonous behaviors, it's going to take a little bit of time to offset that and get back right chemically. So any questions or comments on that? Does that ring a bell for anyone? Jennifer says, yesterday I had my blood work drawn to check my A1C levels, and the praying hard that this work has paid off. I'm sure it has. It came back good. A1C came back good. She took me off most of these meds. Bless the name of the Lord. Good job. Good job. Good job. Getting off those medications is what the summary here. Fantastic. Giving Jesus the credit. Awesome. Jesus, I go back in 3 months for another A1C. She said if they come back even better than these yesterday, that she'll consider taking me off all the meds. I'm so excited. The hard work is paying off. Great job. Great job. All right. Looks like it's kind of quiet on Facebook and kind of quiet in the Zoom room. Before we go today, I've got that other accountability meeting starting in a few minutes. So we're going to go over to that one. So any parting questions? Good for you. Good for you. Diane said, I just turned down a donut and ice cream that my daughter offered me. Can I tell y'all a great dessert that's good for you? I found a little slice of heaven today. Y'all may not like it, but I found a little slice. I got me a Mighty Muffin for lunch, a Mighty Muffin. I used the peanut butter one, and I put 2 teaspoons of Lily's no sugar added chocolate chips in it, and I put a teaspoon of almond butter in it, and it was like eating cake. It was so freaking good. I can't tell you how good that was. I called it my meal episode because I was around 320 calories. But wow, I'll be doing that again and again. That was outstanding. Outstanding little dessert. I ate a dessert for lunch. Plenty of protein. Counting the peanut butter, I had close to 30 grams of protein. So it was really, really good. And I'll be doing that again and again as a void replacement for cake. That was delicious. All right, y'all, I've enjoyed connecting with you. I'm looking forward to 2022, assuming the Lord tarries is coming and we get to see that beautiful January 1st date on the calendar. We're excited. We'll keep bearing with each other through the end of this year and trying to motivate the faithful few. And just hold the line, hold the line. We're almost through the Christmas season, not much longer. So if we can get into 2022 without gaining from this point forward, we won't have to lose the same weight all over again in January. Yeah, good stuff. Hey, Angie. Oh, Merry Christmas, Patty. Good to have everybody. I'm headed to the next meeting. I love y'all in the Lord, and maybe we'll see some of y'all over there in a New Life Accountability meeting. Starts at 8:30. God bless y'all.